And so purpose is something we can draw on to say like, no, this is not just a job. I'm fighting plastic. Or for some people, it's I'm promoting health and wellness. I'm helping people drink more water. Or it's about our island of peace. And I love talking to them about what we have in Israel, where we have this amazing coexistence. Or it's about my own personal career progression, right? Or joining a great culture. But you have to find that purpose in you and then use that to help yourself move forward on days that are naturally just going to be hard days.
Welcome to Ask. My guest today is the General Manager of SodaStream Canada, Rena Nickerson. Rena, such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. An
My
honor.
pleasure. Can you share a little bit about your journey?
Sure. I love working at SodaStream. I have been in the Canadian marketing and packaged goods world now for 22 years, and I've never worked for a company that I'm more proud of in a role that's more fun and exciting than I am now. This is an incredible organization, and I'll say more than anything that the people make it so special.
Sounds like it's more than just a job.
It is. It's kind of, I would say, maybe even a mission. We are all about sustainability and purpose. And every time someone drinks out of a SodaStream bottle,
Yep.
instead of using a single-use bottle, they're doing their part to help save the planet, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
We've saved, I think now, 1.6 billion single-use bottles since I started here.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a huge
it's
impact.
a lot. And that's just Canada.
What do you think is the magic behind SodaStream? Because for me, SodaStream is one of those brands that can kick ass and can get that attention even like from nowhere, just like Nike for beverages. So what do you feel is the flavor that allows SodaStream to be so dominant?
So there's a couple things. Part of it is we have a purpose that drives us, but we don't preach.
Right.
And that's a communications thing, right?
Right?
But no one wants to watch TV and be scolded and told like this is a bad thing. It's not. People make choices. Every one of us makes choices. And our position is no one's going to be perfect. And I'm not going to be perfect for sure, right? But you take the one step. And for SodaStream, it's like a very easy, fun step that you can take to feel like you're making a difference. And then we hear from people who say, like, I look in my blue bin in my recycling and it's empty. It used to be full of bottles, full of beverage bottles. And then once they see that they're able to make that change through SodaStream, it's what else they can do. And then we're always trying to be on that journey with people and help them think about, well, what's the next step? And for us as a company also, we look at how we operate and we look at some of the intrinsic back workings of the organization and say, okay, what can we do better? And we push ourselves.
Yeah.
But also it has to be fun. I mean, it's bubbles. Bubbles are fun.
Yeah.
Like, everyone loves bubbles.
You made it fun. You made you didn't, as you said, you don't preach. You do it in a fun way, if you saw the commercial of Snoop Dogg, not you of course. So
Yeah.
it's done really, really elegantly, and I love it. And I think this is what allows you to create such a powerful brand. Talk about a little bit about your creative strategy. Like how much of it is really saving the planet and reducing plastic, and how much of it is we want to sell more merchandise, more products?
It's all together. The more bottles people use, the less plastic they waste. So it's hard to pull them apart. Creatively, there's certain things we know need to get done. People need to understand what is this system. We're only 11 years in Canada. I know in other countries it's generations.
Yeah.
The company is over 115 years old, but here it's only 11 years. So there's some basic education creatively that we need to do. So we'll always have a demo in our spot. And we always want to be in an environment that's inviting and fun. We love to show interaction, either between Snoop and a turtle or two people. We love situations that are a little bit zany, and we like to take creative risks.
Zany? What do you mean?
So one of our ads recently has someone running out of his single-use plastic bottle is empty, and he's frustrated that he ran out. And all of a sudden, a forklift full of single-use bottles crashes through the wall. Right? And he's just shocked. He's looking like, what is this forklift doing here? And then our spokesperson comes in and says, no, you don't need to just keep buying and buying all that plastic, right? You can make your own SodaStream. So it's always available. So availability is an important benefit also. But there's that key visual of like this crazy forklift coming through.
Right.
That helps people remember the ad and tie it back to us.
What about the HR campaign?
Oh, I love that. I use that video with my new hires, and either I show it to them or I send them a copy so they can watch it, because it's a totally different way of thinking about recruitment. So no, I can't take any credit for it, but I'm the great beneficiary of having the CEO talk to the mountain, Thor, and like, these are our values. This is who we are as a company. Like that won a lot of awards because, you know, when the brief was, we need a recruitment video, you would never have expected to see 10-foot tall Thor walking through a factory with his boss's boss's boss.
Like, it has some unique flavor, and I think it's showing the company culture and DNA, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you feel when employees come and see that? What do you feel they feel?
They're so proud. I actually have a whole project, like every time a new person joins the company in office staff or field staff, I take the GM prerogative to onboard them personally. So I said, okay, I don't care if you're a co-op or you're a director, I get at least half an hour, hopefully an hour of time with you. And in that time, I always start talking about, first of all, me, because I recognize that as much as it's awkward to talk about myself and I don't love it, I am the GM and I set the tone. Right. So what I start with is I say, like, this is who I am as a human being, because every person that joins is the center of their own drama.
Right.
Every person's a person. So I'm a person too. Yeah. And these are my kids and this is my upbringing. These are my values. You know, this is how I'm strong and this is where I fall down sometimes. And I ask them to call me out. So I'll say to them, you know, like, I love to try new things. I love taking risks. Sometimes I forget to finish the last thing that was new. So if you see that I'm jumping too fast, raise your hand and go like, wait, pause a second. Let's finish the last stuff before we jump to the new stuff. Yeah. And then we talk about purpose. So what I tell people is there's always going to be a day that you just don't want to get up out of bed, right? Like it's raining, your dog is sick, your boss emailed you something that made you frustrated, right? Like it happens to every person. Right. And so purpose is something we can draw on to say like, no, this is not just a job. I'm fighting plastic. Or for some people, it's I'm promoting health and wellness. I'm helping people drink more water. Or it's about our island of peace. And I love talking to them about what we have in Israel, where we have this amazing coexistence. Or it's about my own personal career progression, right? Or joining a great culture. But you have to find that purpose in you and then use that to help yourself move forward on days that are naturally just going to be hard days.
Right.
And then we do talk a lot about 6 what counts. So that's when we show the video or have them watch the video on their own. And I give them examples of each of our 6 core values and how we lived it as an organization. And then they can start to think about what they can do and how they can bring those values to life.
And what do you look for in those job interviews? What do you look in the new recruitments?
So in interviews, by the time I interview someone, they've usually been very well vetted for functional ability. So I'm usually not looking at them to see can they do the job. It's much more about fit. And do they have an attitude where they're curious and resourceful and they want to learn things and they want to go above and beyond. You can teach a lot. Not everything, but most functional things can be taught.
Yeah. The information stuff.
The information, how to do your job, it can all be taught. But someone who's curious, you can't teach someone to be curious.
Right. You can't teach attitude.
No. Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard to teach that.
Yeah.
So I look for that. And then the other thing I do in interviews, honestly, is I sell. So if I get a candidate and I can tell very quickly, or I've been told like this is a great candidate, then I will honestly switch from interviewing to selling and talking to them about why I'm so proud to be a streamer. And then I leave a lot of time to answer their questions, and I'll ask them like, if there's anything that's holding you back. So then we know if we're trying to secure them, what do we need to do?
So talk about your team a little bit. Sounds to me like you have great culture and great dynamics with each other. How's the hierarchy, if there is any? Like, can you share a little bit about the team?
I have an amazing team. These people are unbelievable. I hate hierarchy. The worst reason to do anything is because Rena said so. Like, that's a terrible reason. Right. Honestly, I don't even do things because Rena said so. And certainly my kids don't. So why anyone else should, I don't know. So we work on the basis of respect, right? And people contribute so many hours and such great hard work to this company. And in doing that, we build a culture. We call it One SodaStream. It's one of our 6 what count factors. And that's really about teamwork and collaboration and building. I want people to ask each other's questions before they get there. And I want people to ask me hard questions.
Yeah.
So
Question
challenge up, challenge across. Don't take anything for granted. So we'll model it in a meeting. We have these weekly approval meetings. And so my head of sales will make a point or have something that he wants approved. And like in the meeting, and there'll be like, I don't know, 10, 15 people, I'll challenge him, right? Or he'll challenge me, right? And we'll kind of go at it and we'll have a conversation, but our relationship is so strong that people know that it's not personal, right? It's a healthy environment where you can ask hard questions.
So even though you have frictions between each other, you do it in a questioner manner?
Yeah.
How would you phrase that?
Healthy conflict.
Healthy conflict.
Leanne Davies, I have to give props to her. She's an amazing coach and writer. The Good Fight is her excellent book on this, and she talks about a tarp. You can't build a tent if you're not creating some tension.
Right.
Right? You need tension on the tent for it to work, and that's something I'm always working on for myself, is to get better at conflict, and then organizationally to find the right way to express conflict.
What is the key feature you use to resolve conflict?
For me, it's listening. Like, I try to listen and understand the different points of view. And then we have an expression in our house called "What's the basketball?" So my son once got in trouble for having bouncing a basketball in school, and he wanted to get the teacher in trouble. And we said to him, like, what do you really want? You want to get the teacher in trouble? I was on the board. He's like, and I was never going to do it anyway. I said, what do you really want? He's like, I want my basketball back. We're like, okay, so let's build you a plan to get your basketball back. So he wrote a note to the teacher. He apologized, even though he didn't think he did anything wrong. Gave it to the secretaries who loved him to give it to the teacher, right? And we built him a whole plan with him. And like, so what we say now is, what's the basketball? So get through all the noise. What's the thing you really want?
Yeah.
Right? And that's true in business too. And then try to get to that thing, and don't get distracted by the emotions along the way if they're not constructive.
Love it. What's your philosophy become like when you bring yourself to work? What's your attitude toward that? What's the mindset? Can you share a little bit about that?
It's a way of life in a way. I mean, on the one hand, there's a humility that you need to have when you're in any job, but especially in my industry, we're not saving lives, right? And you always have to keep that in mind. And to the consumer, like, SodaStream might be a great way to carbonate water and the way that they get healthier and save the planet, but it's one of the many, many, many things they do, right? So how do you keep that top of mind with consumer? You have to feel it yourself.
Right.
And for me, I feel very strongly that there will be a time when half of Canadians just won't want to use plastic. They won't want single-use bottles anymore. You go to university campuses, when we had, normal university life, you walk around and you see people aren't carrying water bottles. They're using multi-use bottles because it's almost like smoking now.
Right.
So imagine all those students coming out of school, right?
It's an amazing shift between the culture and the mindset of how people in the new generation is more aware to the needs of the earth and the planet.
And we feel it.
And I think these days, positioning companies in a way that allows them to hire to a higher cause, just like saving the planet and reduce the plastic, allows the consumer to become the hero, not the company.
Yeah.
And that's the shift.
Yeah.
And I think you've done an amazing job. Talk about a little bit about the pivot you made from a kitchen appliance to the beverages industry.
Yeah.
Like, that was an amazing shift that eventually led to being acquired by PepsiCo. Can you share a little bit about that?
For us, what's your frame of reference is a big question, right? So we have multiple, right? We're competing against, coffee makers and kettles, but we also compete against all the packaged beverages that exist.
Yeah.
And we understand that people are going to be moving away from packaged beverages. We see it. To their great credit, Pepsi saw it too. And the last thing Ingenuity did as CEO, and the first thing Ramon Laguarta did as CEO, they jointly together decided to buy SodaStream. And they created a division called Beyond the Bottle. And the point of that division is to say, we want to help these people that want to find a different solution, a solution that does not use single-use bottles. And it took incredible courage. We were really annoying to them before that. I mean, we used to have advertising that would kind of snipe at them. We'd make comments. We would get under their skin, or we tried to anyway. I don't know if we actually did. And And they said, okay, like we want to keep these guys in our family, but we want to give them independence to run. So give them access to the resources, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those resources in a very tangible way. But give them ways to say, I want this and I want this. Pepsi is a huge organization, that's at least 250,000 people.
Wow. So how do you keep a company that you purchased the same culture, the same DNA, and not taking over? Like how is the balance between those two companies working together now?
So in many ways, we're very separate. You're here in SodaStream's office. Yeah. Pepsi's office is not here. They have a separate office. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous office. Wonderful people. And we have good relationships, but we sit separately. We operate with our own CEO. I have a lot of GMs that I work with also that we interact, and we make a lot of decisions as SodaStream as an organization. Now, clearly, we report into PepsiCo, so major decisions go up between my CEO and them, and I don't get involved at that level. Where they do get involved is stuff like financial reporting. So, we have to, work to their control standards. Of course, we would always do that, work to their compliance levels, report our monthly reporting has to happen in a certain time frame, which is very tight. So the finance team has really felt the integration, but the rest of us are not integrated. The rest of us are doing what we do. Now, when it comes to resources, they've allowed us to also bring in some of their products. So this Bubbly Drops launch is just an amazing opportunity for us because this brand is so completely aligned with you just look at the smile, it's such a happy, cheerful brand, a little bit cheeky,
has emotion to it.
There, and Michael Bublé as the very fun, loving, and mischievous spokesperson works on that brand, and he also does it, as a SodaStream brand ambassador on Bubbly. So
how does it work? Like I pour it to the glass.
So usually we pour it into you do a very small amount into the bottle. Mm-hmm. Once you carbonate it, and then you pour in some of the flavoring.
Smells good.
Yeah, you can put a teeny bit in your glass too if you want to try it. That's a lot. But you're welcome to try it and see how it works. It might be a little strong.
I need to stir.
Yeah, okay.
It's not that sweet, but it's good.
Yeah, it's unsweetened. It's healthy. And this is like a mega brand for PepsiCo that, for us to have access to is a privilege and an honor.
Right.
And then we also launched another Pepsi brand that you might recognize called Pepsi.
Wow.
And this is...
So that's exactly the same Pepsi you would purchase in store? Just you can make it at home?
Yeah, we have 5 SKUs, and the PepsiCo developed for our system, and now you can make it at home. So when we talk about being a beverage player, right, you say, okay, well, we still make sparkling water, and our focus will always be the health and wellness in sparkling water. But having access to these brands just gives people so much customization opportunity.
That's an amazing shift. Like seeing Pepsi doing such a move, showing the world really
they believe in this, right? They planted their flag.
Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing innovation.
Yeah. And then locally, I'll say, when you think about us as a beverage player, one of the biggest things we've done is we've doubled our door count, so the number of stores that we're available in. And we had a mass expansion in the last 2 years into grocery stores, drugstores.
How did you manage to do that without hiring the cost for that? Like having more franchising, more distribution, it's more money, no?
It costs more, but it makes more money too, so it's okay. Yeah. We always look at what's the net impact, and we'll spend money to make money. That's part of courage. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. I mean, now you can go to most grocery stores and you can change your gas there. And that's, for us, very important because we want people to be able to have a frictionless experience.
Right. Like you're doing the same as Nespresso done for coffee. You make that for beverages, so sparkling beverages. Okay. Do you believe that sparkling beverages can become a culture, just like coffee?
I think it is. I mean, we look at the consumption behavior, and I think people use sparkling water and flavored sparkling water to bring different types of energy into their day. So caffeine is, and I worked in coffee, and I don't drink, and I worked in coffee for a long time, but it doesn't sit well with me. So I learned I can't actually drink it. I can have some decaf once in a while, but I don't do well with caffeine.
But it doesn't affect your energy, like you're a very hyper person.
I can't drink caffeine, so I get all my energy from myself.
Cool.
And not from sleep, because I'm really not good at sleeping enough. So.
How much do you sleep at night? 6, 7?
6 hours.
Less?
I try to get 6. I feel like it's a waste of time. I'll put these away. I feel like sleeping, it's just kind of boring, like nothing happens,
I think if we didn't need to sleep, the world will be much more efficient. Like we can
Yeah.
accomplish way more than that.
Right? Like think of what I could do.
It's weird.
I'd
Like,
probably have written like 3 novels by now if I didn't have to sleep.
you want to write a book?
I studied English literature in undergrad, but
You don't need literature these days to write a book. You can just write it.
I know. Someday maybe. I prefer speaking over writing.
If
but
you can
I
write a
like
book,
writing.
what would it was about?
Leadership.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. I just don't know if there's anything new to be said that's interesting to people, but that's the topic that fascinates me
I don't
most.
think you have to say something new. I saw you 2 years ago before the COVID thing in a speaking event downtown, and you were really inspiring as a leadership. And you've
Thank
done
you.
it in a really elegant way. So sometimes you don't need to say something that is fresh. Sometimes it's just the way you say it and the way you implement in your own life. I think that's what's inspired other people.
Thank you.
And I think if you can write a book about leadership, it will be your own flavor. Like, so it doesn't have to be like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It just have to be you.
I should start it at least. I should at least journal with words.
Like, do you write a journal? Like, do you have KPI and goals for yourself, or you just
I
start
have
with
a
that?
notebook where I keep track of what I need to get done and I take notes.
Do you feel your kids like knowing something that you don't? Like,
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have this energy that like you sense their senses are sensing something else. Like they look at social media way different than we do.
Oh my
like
goodness.
we not born into social media. They just, for them, it's just another way of communication.
Yeah.
For us,
native.
it's an external vehicle. So I can see it in my own kids, 9 and 6, and I can see how they're approaching that, and it's amazing. 2 daughters.
I have a
right?
daughter who's 22 and a son who's 17.
Wow. And how you feel your leadership as a mother, as a person, is affecting them, and you want to shift their future with that?
It's a really good question. I talk to them about stuff that's going on at work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have like a business challenge, or, I have a hard meeting coming up, or I didn't have a good day. And I'm very open about that with my family. It's like a dinner time conversation. And I want them to hear that it's hard sometimes and that you work through stuff. Or it's really fun sometimes and you can do great things. But like I see my responsibility, not just to my kids, but to my staff, as being in some way a role model, and saying like, hey, you can balance your priorities. You can be very explicit about your values. And then I won't be perfect, but I'll try to live them and try to talk about them and talk about when there's conflict in them, so that they have a way to kind of manipulate, like cope with the issues that they're dealing with.
What do you think it does when you're reflecting on your own life?
To me, or for the kids? For them. I want them to be proud. Like, I want them to see that I care a lot about making my people's lives better, and that I put my staff really at the forefront of the way I operate, even because they'll see me in, every mom situation, right? And there's no guard up. They just see how I feel. And so I'm hoping that if they see that, like, I'm fighting for my people, if that's what needs to be done, or celebrating wins with them, or giving them challenges that are really exciting, that they'll understand that, like, people management can be incredibly rewarding. And that also, I'll say, like, I'm an Orthodox Jew. And most people I work with have never met anyone who's Jewish, or certainly anyone who's Orthodox. There's so few of us. And so there's this idea that, like, I need to be a model, because people years down will say, like, oh, I met a Jewish girl once. I worked for her.
Right.
She was actually okay, or, she was a good boss. Like, that sets up almost as a representative of everyone else.
That's so important. Like, there's so much stereotypes on media these days, and you want to reflect something that is fresh. And I think this is really an important mission, what you do. Let's say you have a magic wand.
Yeah.
And you could fix anything, you click on it. What would you do?
For myself or for the world?
Whatever you want.
For myself, hands down, ability to focus.
Wow.
Hands down, and this is a confession that I don't know how I'm comfortable with on camera, but I don't think I'm alone in this. I think this is a pretty common issue.
Absolutely.
In fact, I watched an Explained on Netflix about it, so I know it's not just me.
With the flow?
Yes, with
Right.
I have his book.
didn't
There's
help.
a Kavanaugh. So he wrote a whole book about deep work, and I borrowed it from my good friends, and it sits next to my bed so that when I'm sleeping, when I'm forced to sleep, because who likes sleeping, the book can kind of emanate advice to me. Because I actually really love to read fiction. I really have no interest in reading self-help books. Is probably why I'm not writing one. But the ability to just put my head down, I'm only able to focus really after hours, and it's so unfair to my family.
What do you feel you're more focused in? Like nighttime, morning time?
I'm a night focuser, absolutely. Like, I know that there's no emails coming in, no distractions. I'm kind of bored of Instagram and Facebook, which is great.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, not as bored. I wish I could be as bored, but people keep putting up polls on LinkedIn. I'll get bored of that too. Because we're getting there, guys. Stop with the polling. Enough polls. I know the algorithm loves polls, but we could just all stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can get into a flow state after dinner, and I just know that I can stay up because I can work very late, and I can just flow and get stuff done, and I'm really good then.
And for the world, what would you change?
Oh, empathy.
Empathy.
Like understanding one another, like
we all need more empathy.
Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, whether that's, by the way, a polar bear, a sea turtle, or a human being in your house or halfway around the world. But I feel like there's so many walls that humanity's been putting up, and we're so naturally, I hate to say, we're naturally xenophobic. We look for the differences, right? And we try to find why our group is better than others. And that's not helpful, right? Like, how are you going to help build a better planet or a better humanity when you're only about like your own group? You need to think about the broader world around you.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about space is it allows us to understand that we all one. We all one group.
Yeah.
A lot of people talking about that. Astronauts, even Jeff Bezos, when he went outside, he's talked about that feeling. Like you understand something else about the world when you go outside.
So when I was a kid, that was my dream, was to be the first child astronaut. So there's actually a letter in my bathroom from Senator Al D'Amato, who is my U.S. Senator, because I had written him saying, I want to be the first kid in outer space. And I think it's part of it is just weightlessness is so cool. But part of it is like that perspective of like seeing the whole planet and going like, that's my little home.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I believe like in 10, 15 years, we all will be able to do that. Like space travel is now the thing and becoming cheaper. And there is space balloons and all that.
If I don't get nauseous, I will sign up. And assuming I can afford it, because it's not going to be cheap. Not everything goes as you expect. I guess in the world of social media, we all know how to make ourselves look perfect. And we make our lives look perfect online. And it's not always that way. And we know there's a lot more behind the scenes. So yes, I love being the general manager, and I have an amazing, amazing job. But when I started, I will say I really did struggle. I had a baby. My daughter was born when I was in business school. And I was very, very lucky to get a job right out of school at Heinz Canada. I actually wrote a paper about baby food that Heinz makes and interviewed someone there and was able to get a job basically through that interaction, which is great. It's an amazing brand and company. Now it's merged. It's a whole different entity.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever been as miserable as the 2 years that I worked at Heinz. I don't know if I was a great assistant brand manager. Like a great ABM is super detailed. Like they make great project managers, and I'm not really all that detailed at the heart of it. But I also, I worked in an environment that wasn't a great environment. And I knew that it wasn't a happy place to be. I was asked to do things that were crazy. Just to give you an example, on 9/11, on the day of 9/11, I'm actually from Manhattan originally.
You're born in Manhattan?
I was born in Manhattan. I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And 9 a.m., thank God, my husband actually was able to call, and he knew my parents were safe, so that we knew. And then the phone lines basically went dead to New York City. And so I was a wreck. You know, we were seeing on TV what was going on. There's no Twitter or internet, so you just see like this footage of people watching TV. And I just said, you know, I need to go home. Like, I just need to be with my family. This is really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I had a really big deadline the next day. And so my boss and boss's boss said, like, well, if you go home, like, what are we going to tell the GM tomorrow when you're not ready for your presentation? Like, Rena couldn't handle it.
Wow.
I said, just go downstairs, like, walk around for a few hours. Like, just don't focus on it. Don't watch any TV. And, like, when you feel better, come upstairs and do your work. So sometimes you learn how to behave from great
Wow.
leaders, and sometimes you learn how not to behave and how not to lead. So that gives you some context. And I'm saying I wasn't perfect, but it was not a healthy environment.
Yeah.
And then one day I went to the photocopier to pick up something. We were all paper-based really then. And I saw on the Xerox machine an org chart. And an org chart, it's like Google Earth. You know, like the first time you use Google Earth, what do? Like,
Yeah. You play with it.
you play with it, you look for your house.
Yeah.
It's true, right? Like you could look at like the Taj Mahal, right? Or the Great Wall of China. You know, like the first thing you do in a Google
your
Earth
house.
is you look for your house.
Right.
Same thing, right? You see an org chart and you could be like, ooh, who are they moving around? No, first thing I do is I look down to the very, very bottom because I was a very new employee.
Yeah.
For my role, which was one of the 2 assistant brand managers on ketchup, and I was there. It said vacant. And there were a few other roles that said vacant, and I realized that there was a change happening and that I was going to lose my job.
That's how you find out.
That's how I found out I was going to be fired.
Talking about bad culture in
Yeah.
a company.
At least, you know, poor office supply management, I will say.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on what you print where you print it. So I
Right.
took this like shocking, burning piece of paper, and I don't know why, I felt like it had to go back to my VP, and I like walked back to his office and I slipped it on his chair and I slipped out of his office.
What did you do next?
I freaked out. My husband had been at Nortel, a great Canadian company that imploded on itself. And he at that point had been exited from Nortel with, 10,000 other people. We had a 1-year-old at home, maybe 2-year-old at home. So I was the breadwinner. And it was up to me to have a career. We'd invested in my MBA. And so my feeling was if I'm fired, like I'll never get a job. Everyone knows everyone. They'll know I failed and I'll never get another job. So I was in this race against time to like find a job on my terms rather than being terminated from the organization. So I went home, cried, freaked out. My husband calmed me down, came back and found Marketing Magazine, old school magazine. And in the very back, they were like classifieds and listings of recruiters. So I just sat in this empty office and I would call recruiters, pitching, trying to find another job because I had no idea how to even find a job. There was no LinkedIn or Indeed or anything back then. And I didn't really have a lot of luck. And so one day I was at my desk doing work and I got a call from Dana Stewart at Management One. She's a recruiter. And she told me that there's an opening at Colgate Palmolive with a really great boss. And she wanted to know if I'd be interested in it. And I was like, yes, absolutely. So, we talked about, resumes and logistics and all that. And before I hung up, I just said, Dana, I just don't remember calling you. Like, how did you find me? And she said, oh, no, you didn't call me. I just called the front desk and I asked for the ABM on ketchup. And they put me through to your desk. Now, there were 2 ABMs on ketchup. I happened to know the receptionist somewhat because I would say hi when I came in. We would chat. We were best friends, but like we were friendly, right? And I was a person to her, and she knew I was the ABM on ketchup. And so that little
that small
choice,
hello,
that little
hello, allowed you to go direct, like to the one person that make the decision.
Yeah.
And it changed your career.
In a huge way.
Wow.
A huge way. And then when I went to Colgate, I knew I was a failure. Like I knew I was supposed to be fired. And I felt like someday everyone would just see, like they would wake up, they'd be like, we made a huge mistake. You do not deserve a place here. And it took a long time. I had an amazing boss, James Masterson, who had no idea what I had gone through. But he believed in me. We had a great interview. I was very gutsy somehow in this interview, and it went well for me.
But it sounds to me like this whole bad environment you had in the beginning of your career, like reborn your inner lion in some way and made you active of changing the position you were at.
Yeah.
It make you more active. Like some people become more passive about things like that and saying that I don't have luck, and you decided what I'm going to do about it, and I'm going to be the upper hand.
Yeah.
And you changed it.
Yeah, I had to. Like, we needed to pay our condo, like to pay the bills. Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, it's an awkward place to be when you feel like a failure and you feel like everyone now knows that you couldn't hack it. But I think I always had like a strength, like a confidence to say like, okay, even though I objectively maybe don't deserve this, which is untrue, of course. But at the time I felt like, well, I was, clearly terrible at my job.
Right.
Like there was some part of me that was driven to say like, go, work. You're going to make it happen. But I've been asked also, where does that confidence come from? And I think a lot of it is upbringing. Like we talked beforehand about inspiration.
Right.
Like what inspires me. And to me, I grew up as an Orthodox Jew in a family of Orthodox Jews. And that means that, we believe in the Bible and the Jewish faith, and we hold a lot of rules. There's a lot of things that we do, and they're very, very strict on.
Do you feel it gives you some sort of leverage, like an inner strength?
Yeah, it's a line, right? So I'm a modern Orthodox Jew, which means I'm here. I go to university. I read secular books. I'm not living in a totally different world. But at the same time, I have never emailed someone on the Jewish Sabbath, on Shabbat. It just won't happen. I'll never do it. And I don't care what kind of crazy work emergency. I worked through massive recalls, massive, not at SodaStream, obviously long before, huge recalls. And I remember having to put my phone in the basement because it was triggering me. Just seeing the thing was giving me stress. But no matter what, if someone wanted to talk to me, they would have to drive to my house and we'd have a conversation, which no one has ever done. So to have a line and say, no, I won't cross this, and yes, it's my choice, but it's really a higher purpose. Mm-hmm. I think even when you're feeling very insecure, it grounds you.
Wow. It's a great perspective. So we talked about failure earlier. What is considered a success to you?
I always say that God willing, at the end of 120 very healthy, fulfilling years, I look back on my life and I look at the people I'm able to impact in a positive way. I'm never going to remember at that point. If my brand grew 20 or 25% in 2018, no one's going to remember. Yes, of course, I will always go after my numbers and I always look for business success. But really, at the end of the day, it's about people.
Right.
Who have I touched and who's touched me? And what are the relationships that we built?
Inspiring.
There you go.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Rena, it was a pleasure.
I appreciate your coming in here.
Thank you. And we'll see you next episode.
So real.
Bye.
Dodger punches, Ali in his prime. I just see the world a little different. My own state of mind. I just take the life I'm living soon.